What's up, everybody? This is episode 26 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. Thanks, everybody, for all the support that you've given us thus far. If for those who haven't seen our podcast, go to Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram TV. But without further ado, I have a special guest for you guys, Mr. John Kiggins, former manager at Iona College, won a couple MAAC championships with Iona, and is now the head coach and dean at St. John's Prep in Queens. John, thank you for coming out, to speak to me during this time. I know you're a busy man these days.
Yeah, no. Again, appreciate you for having me on. Me and you go way back to our college days when you were at St. Francis, Brooklyn. I was at Iona. I love everything that you do in terms of articles for the kids and the community. So when you asked me to come on, I was extremely honored. So appreciate you for allowing me to come on and talk to everybody.
Indeed. So my very first question for you is, what is John Kiggins' coaching philosophy?
Coaching philosophy, that's a great one. So, we like to be competitive at all times. The one thing that I like to do is similar at that was done at Iona, which is run and gun. A lot of our teams that we have are all transition. We play four guards for the most part. We don't really have a big, but we get out and run the ball. If the ball goes in on the other side, we're taking it out and going down and looking to get a quality shot. We're looking to drive, kick, and get threes up, as well as getting some transition buckets and some easy transition layups. So it's mainly a lot of run and gun, getting out, trying to score as many points as we can. This past year we had, I think, 4 games where we scored over 80 points. We had 2 games where we almost scored 90. So we were able to really get the ball out in transition and score a lot during our time this year.
So when did basketball, first come into your life? Like, when did it start?
So it's funny enough. I've been around basketball my whole life. I started when I was a kid. My grandpa, he was the assistant coach for the Manhasset girls basketball team, and I was actually the water boy. So I go to all the games. I'd be the water boy. I'd help out, go to the practices and things like that. Then I began playing in CYO, growing up in Long Island and Manhasset, playing CYO and Long Island Lightning and going to Lehigh summer camps and things like that. Playing at St. Mary's Elementary School when I was in 7th and 8th grade. And then when I got to high school, I went to St. Mary's High School. I played my first 2 years. I played my freshman year, and I played my sophomore year on JV. And then my junior year, it just happened to be the team that went 29-1 with Chavaughn Lewis, Dante, Agnew, Charles McCann, Justin Bailey, and all those guys, Wilson Molina. So I didn't play those 2 years, but I helped out with the team. I videotaped some games. I also played CYO with my buddies, just to make sure that we're still playing and getting up and down. And then I went to college where I became the manager at Iona, and the rest is history.
So let's go back to the very, very beginning. Talk about growing up in Manhasset, Long Island, and what's like the basketball culture out in the suburbs of Long Island.
Yeah, so actually Manhasset is a town that's predominantly lacrosse based. There's very few basketball players that are strictly basketball in the town of Manhasset. But out in Long Island, there are still a lot of great basketball cities and great basketball towns and traditions. A lot of the high schools out in Long Island are really, really tough. You take a look at the Lehighs, you take a look at Chaminade, St. Mary's being one of them, Holy Trinity. And then you take a look at Brentwood where Jordan Riley is, and you take a look at some of these other public schools where these guys are. But Manhasset growing up, it was mainly lacrosse. We turn out a ton of D1 lacrosse players that go to Duke and North Carolina and the Ivy League schools. So, basketball was just something that kids played to stay in shape for lacrosse season. But there, are pockets of kids that, would go out and play basketball. And actually Manhasset for the past couple of years has turned out a lot of really good talent. They made it to the last year, 2 years ago now, they made it to the state semifinals in the A public school division. So, it seems as though as, time goes on and basketball is kind of expanding outward, the more kids are playing there, which is fantastic.
So, what if you played in tournaments when you were younger, what tournaments did you love playing in?
We always played up in Brewster up there when I was playing with Long Island Lightning. We did the national circuit when you go down to Orlando and play. It was mainly, we did a lot of local ones with the kids that I played with. I did play with a couple of kids that ended up going to some D2s and D3s, which was fun. A buddy of mine played at Widener, then went to Clemson where he was a practice player as well. You know, so it was a lot of the tournaments we went to were local ones. We didn't really go anywhere on the grand scale of things. But, you know, as you know, when you're traveling for basketball, it's mainly about the relationships that you build with kids who aren't from your town and you know, relationships that you hold on to for life, really, that you can bond over the game of basketball with, which is always the main thing.
So let's talk about your high school years. You went to St. Mary's in Manhasset, you know, the alma mater of Danny Green. You know,
Yeah.
talk about the 2 years on JV.
Yeah, so our freshman year team, we were really good. We played in a lot of really tough tournaments. We had a really good coach, Danny Kiernan. He brought in guys like Travis Berry, who went to Seton Hall and then ended up playing at Sacred Heart University. Mikey Reed, I don't know where he ended up playing. He transferred out of St. Mary's, as well as a couple other guys that are still involved in the game of basketball. They didn't play in college, but are still involved. Wilson Molina, he played at Farmingdale State. JV was the same cast of characters that we had, but in my high school career when I was there, you know, we had the likes of, you know, Chavaughn Lewis, who's the all-time leading scorer at Marist College. We had Justin Bailey, who went on to Farmingdale State. We have Dante Agnew, who went on to, you know, NIAC, who now is training the likes of, you know, Justin Wright Foreman and guys like that who are in the G League, and other guys like Nick Richards, who was at Kentucky. So they were really, really good. It was a big-time basketball tradition. And then right behind me, when I was a senior, you know, we had Jesse Govan, who came in as a freshman. He went to Georgetown, who then transferred out. We had Christian Vital, Devontae Green. You know, so St. Mary's is and always has been a really rich basketball school in terms of tradition. Even Coach Klus, who was at Iona, coached at St. Mary's. And that's, you know, he basically made a name for himself at St. Mary's and went on to the college ranks from there. Rob Jones, who's at Norfolk State, he was the coach at St. Mary's High School. So there's a lot of, if you look at St. Mary's High School in terms of basketball coaches as well as basketball players, there's a lot of really big names. Obviously, Danny Green being one of them, you know, but there are some other big names too that have come out of that school.
Now, talk about, you know, when you decided, you know, that playing you weren't gonna get too far playing, and you decided to give that up to be a manager. You know, talk about that experience.
Yeah, so once I looked at the team and I realized, you know, I probably wasn't going to play. I wasn't playing much on JV. You know, I was towards the end of the bench, but I always worked hard and tried to do anything I could to get on the court at any time. And then it came time where I basically knew I wasn't going to make it. You know, this team was stacked. They were really good, really competitive. Again, they went 29-1, which, you know, they beat every team except for Lehigh in the Federation final. But I wanted to stay a part of it any way I could. You know, I wanted to make sure I was still around, whether it was going to practice, keeping the clock, whether it was going to the games, filming the games for them. That way they can do film studies. So I basically immersed myself in staying as much a part of it as possible. Not really knowing, you know, 6, 7, 8 years down the line where I'd be now, you know, in terms of coaching at high school. But for me, it was more so, look, I really want to stay a part of it because I love the game. I really want to learn more about it any way I can, learn from these guys who are really good, who are definitely going to go on and play at the next level, you know, anywhere. So let me just be around it any way I can, which is ultimately what I did.
Awesome. So let's talk about that 29-1 team. In 2010 and 11, like, you guys had Chavaughn Lewis, Charles McCann, Dante Agnew. Like, how was it being along for that ride?
I mean, those dudes were superstars. You know, that was probably one of the best teams around, you know, in the past 10 years at least now at St. Mary's. I mean, you had Chavaughn Lewis, who was super athletic, super versatile, can shoot it, can you know, get out in transition, make really athletic plays. You had Justin Bailey, who could really shoot it. Charles McCann, who was an undersized big, but was a dog, was a complete workhorse. You know, he would give you everything that he could in order to win a game. Dante Agnew was probably one of the best point guards I've seen. You know, was able to get the ball to guys, didn't care about scoring, was able to make passes that you'd be like, how the hell did that get to that guy, you know? Even Wilson Molina coming off the bench, Travis Whitfield, you had all these guys who had played together for as long as they did growing up and playing for the same AAU organizations and stuff like that, coming together and making a special season their senior year. It was truly incredible. The games were packed. If you needed to get to the freshman game at St. Mary's and watch from freshman game on in order to get a seat for the varsity game. So imagine that the varsity game started at 7:30, the freshman game started at 4:15. You needed to get there at 4:15 if you wanted a chance to even get a seat and get your foot in the gym for the games at 7:30. That's how much hype and how much buzz there was around. So, I mean, those games were fun. I mean, even the other teams in Long Island, like the Chaminades and the St. Anthony's and Trinities, they had fantastic teams. So when they would come in, MSG varsity would sometimes do live stream games. They came in and did the Chaminade game, and there were people hanging from the side baskets. I mean, anybody just wanted to get in and get a seat to watch the game. But that was back then, and it was truly incredible to see and witness and just kind of be there and just take it all in. It was something I'll never forget, obviously, in terms of the crowds and the size, because even when I go back to some of the games now, they may not be as crowded, but they are still as exciting when I go back to St. Mary's and watch them play. But those games were just something else to be a part of and something else to watch for sure.
Now, let's talk about Iona College, the 4 years that you were there. Talk about, your experience as a Division I manager.
Yeah. So, for me, I decided I wanted to go to Iona pretty much when I was a junior in high school. I took a visit. I loved it. It reminded me of St. Mary's, which I loved. It was small. It was very family-based. I knew some people that went there. It was a small school. Everybody knows everybody. It's close to home, but it's far enough away where you can go away. So for me, that was key in order when I was picking a college. And, I'd seen Coach Cluse at Island Garden when I was watching my brother play at Island Garden. He and I were going back and forth, and he had asked me where I was going to school. And I told him, I'm actually coming to Iona. And he had said, hey, come see me and see if you'd be interested in potentially being a manager. And it was homecoming weekend my freshman year. I went to the maroon and white game and spoke to Coach Cluse after, and he said, hey, if you want in, all for you. And, I met the two other managers at the time, one of whom being Spencer Boateng, who I know you're close with, and the other being Jose Paguave as well. And they took me aboard and kind of showed me the ropes. And I have to say it was easily the best 4-year experience I've ever done in my entire life. It was long hours in the gym, whether you're setting up for practice, then practice is going on, you're making sure that you're running the clock, you're making sure the bottles are filled, you're making sure that if you're filming, if you're statting, whatever you're doing, you're making sure you're doing it at 100% level. Then to after practice, making sure that the gym is cleaned up, making sure that the laundry's done. Guys want to come back in for shots later, making sure that there's somebody there to rebound. You're setting up the shooting machines and things like that. You're making sure travel's arranged and foods and meals are all coming on time. It almost prepared me for life in a way. Without those experiences, it's something you can't really learn in a textbook or you can't learn in a lecture. When you're sitting in the college classroom, that's real life. You're learning about time management. You're learning about responsibility, accountability. You're basically learning the keys to life via the game of basketball. So for me, it was easily hands down some of the best experience and some of the best friends I've made. Me and AJ English are really tight. We hang out and talk all the time, and even all the other guys from Iona, we always keep in touch and stay connected and just reminisce over. I remember that time in practice or that road trip or that game and kind of go over everything. It truly probably was the best decision I've ever made.
So let's talk about how the road trips were and the practices were.
Yeah. Well, so basically the road trips, at Iona, we had some years where we were doing a lot of bus trips. We were going up to Albany. We were going up to some of the new Northeast states, some of the Philly schools. Then we had trips where, we played the University of Kansas when they had Joel Embiid, when they had Andrew Wiggins, all those guys, Frank Mason. We played the University of Nevada. We played Florida Gulf Coast, Northern Iowa. So we were going out, flying different places. And when you're on these trips, one, you got to make sure that, first and foremost, you pack the uniforms, right? You pack the uniforms. That's first and foremost. If you leave the place without the uniforms, you're in big trouble. But just making sure that the meals are set up for after practice, after, getting off the flight, making sure that things are set up, making sure that everybody has what they need, right? Road trips, you don't take it lightly. You go and it's a business trip. It's not a leisure trip. You're not going for fun, right? You're going because you have a task at hand. You're going to win the game, and you need to do everything that you can in order to prepare yourself for winning that game. Making sure that guys are all covered in the hotels, flights, everything like that. And the same thing with practices. Practices were tough. You always had to make sure that you're there. You're making sure that anything that anybody needs, you got to make sure you're on it right away. If guys need a new pair of shoes, you're running up either to the upstairs closet, you're running into the locker room, making sure that everybody has everything. If you need something from the training room, you're on it right away. Whatever you can do in order to make the team better, in order for the team to run seamlessly, you need to do. That's why I think for managers, and this goes for every manager, you do it not to be recognized. You do it not to get the accolades. You do it not to say, look at me, I'm a manager. You do it to help the program win. You work in the background. It's not about you. You take no credit. At Iona, it was all volunteer, right? So it's not like we were getting paid to do it. It's not like we were getting, scholarship to do it. It was volunteer. And everybody who did it for the love of basketball, right? We love basketball, wanted to be a part of basketball, and wanted to do anything that we can get a foot in the door in the game of basketball. So I'll volunteer any amount of time I need to do in order to make that happen. And, it was time consuming. Obviously, some people would say, did you miss out on college experience? I say, no, I probably had an even better college experience because I was able to travel to various parts of the country, visit some of these unbelievable schools, and be a part of some unbelievable traditions in the game of basketball. That's something that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. So I actually take it to the next step and say, you know what, you could have your college experience if you're partying and doing all that, frats and so on and so forth. But, we got to play at the University of Kansas, the home of basketball. Not many people can say I've been to a Kansas Jayhawk game at Naismith. Not many people can say that. Fortunately, I'm lucky enough to say that, and so are the other guys are lucky enough to say that as well. But manager it's a hard job. It's grueling. You got to make sure that you're always there. Your phone's got to be on. You got to be active. You got to make sure that you're able to fulfill the role. And if you do, it's definitely worth it.
But so yeah, I mean, as you're a manager, you're also a college student as well. How do you handle the time management? Is because being a manager, like you said, is time consuming. You don't really have time for much else. You don't really have time for to be a part of everything like the regular students. But also your advisor and you don't have the same advisor as the athletes. You basically a regular student being with the team. Like, talk about that for all the other managers that for all the kids that may want to become a manager on the Division I level.
Yeah, 100%. So, like you said, it's difficult to weigh and say, okay, we have practice, we have this, we have that, we have road trips. I have to get an assignment in, I have to get a project in. I got to do everything I need to do in order to get certain things in. But like I said, it's something that it could never be taught in a classroom, right? You could obviously talk about, okay, here's our course on time management. Here's our course on how you're going to set everything up. And we'll go from there. It was real life. If I had class at 8, we had practice at 10, I needed to make sure, okay, I need to get whatever I need to get done for classes after. That way I'm ready to get to class on time, then practice on time, make sure everything's running smoothly. So time management is key. And one of the greatest lines I've ever heard used, and I still use it till this day with my kids, and it's something I always live by, which the great Zach Boisvert taught me, who's now the assistant coach at Army, is don't be the last gazelle. He always said, don't be the last gazelle. And to me, that's the way I live life. You never want to be the last gazelle, because the last gazelle, right? So, making sure that you're there on time, making sure that you're there early, making sure that you have everything you need in order to prepare you for success, and making sure that everything goes smoothly and that you don't miss a beat, whether you're on the road, whether you're here, whether, whatever's going on, that you have everything you need, because at the end of the day, school obviously comes first. And, if you're falling behind in school, everything else is going to suffer. So, schoolwork is first and foremost the key, and then everything else will fall into place. So making sure that your schoolwork is done is always key. But time management, again, it's something you can never learn in a textbook. You couldn't learn it in a lecture hall. It prepared me for life. It prepares you for life. And if you want that kind of experience, there's no better way than becoming a student manager. Not only at basketball, there's some kids who may want to be, the baseball team manager, the lacrosse team manager, whatever sport. It prepares you for life, and it connects you, and it's great on a job resume when you're going into that real world and saying, if we're comparing resumes, I'm a manager and this is a regular student. I'm able to prepare myself by saying I had time management skills. I did all these things while still maintaining an X amount of GPA. So it just makes you look that much better.
So let's talk about the 2 years that you guys played in the NCAA tournament. Like, how was it being? You already mentioned playing in the playing Kansas,
Mm-hmm.
but being at the big dance at the big dance. Like, how was that feeling for you? And also winning those championships in Albany.
Yeah, no. So fortunately enough for me, my freshman year, we won the MAAC championship up in Springfield, beating Manhattan. And during that year, the rings from the previous year's at-large bid team had come in, and the manager at the time, Jose, said, "Don't take any of these for granted. It doesn't come around very often." And after winning the first championship, you say, what is this guy talking about? This is a great program. It's a great team. It seems like we could win this every year. It seems like we'll win it every year. But he was right. The first year was unbelievable. We played at the University of Dayton. We played Ohio State with Aaron Kraft, Deshaun Thomas, all those guys. And it's one of the coolest experiences I think I could say I've ever had in my life. You go on a private jet, you get all the fans coming to the open practices, you get the police escorts, you get the people, we went out to a restaurant out there, you get the people coming up and asking all the guys for the autographs. It's one of those experiences where you get to play the big dance. This is what every person is tuned into in the world. Everybody's watching March Madness. Everybody's sitting here watching this. It's something that you're a part of, and something that you're able to take part of and now say, you know what, I was on the floor. I was on the bench. I was sitting there. I was able to be a part of that team that went and did those things. Then sophomore year, we went up and played Manhattan again in the finals up in Springfield, and we lost. We went to the NIT. Junior year, we went to the finals again, played Manhattan and lost. And then you're wondering to yourself, did I not take that first year as seriously as I thought, because I thought maybe there would be more to come? Did I take some things for granted? Did I not appreciate what I had in terms of those things? And then senior year, it's like the last dance. You're sitting there and you're saying, man, this could be the last game at this point. This could be the last game. This could be the last road trip. This could be the last tournament that you go to. And we went up to Albany, and luckily we were able, to pull it out against Monmouth, a great Monmouth team that year with Justin Robinson and all those guys who had knocked off a ton of Power 5 teams, who people were saying should be an at-large team, 100%. We were able to win the MAAC championship then, and it was probably one of the greatest things I've ever experienced in my life. It almost brought me to tears in a way, because all that hard work that you put in and making sure that everything's set up for games, practices, all the long hours that you're doing, it pays off. It's like, okay, this is what it was all for. And I basically didn't take that entire week for granted. I went to every single event that was had. I went and did anything that they had, I was a part of. I made sure I was there, just soaking it all in, making sure that I was there and being present for all of it. And that year we went out and played Iowa State out in Denver. They had Mark, what's his name? Morris, the point guard, George Niang, all those guys. Jameel McKee, and it was, even though we lost, it was still one of the coolest experiences I've ever been a part of. And again, when you're around all those guys in the locker room, all those, all the times and for all the games, it's true what they say when it's like, when you're a part of a team, it's really your family. Those guys are brothers for life. Again, I still keep in contact. I go and visit them. I went and visited some of them 2 years ago. I went overseas and spent some time with them watching their games. But it truly is a family for life atmosphere. It truly is a family atmosphere, being around everybody and sharing those inside jokes and everything like that. So it was some of the coolest experiences I'll always remember. I saved everything from those NCAA tournaments that we had. I have everything, all of it saved. So it's something that I'll never, ever get rid of, for sure.
Talk about you even though you weren't a coach, you looked the part. Let's talk. I remember one time during a game, I saw you with suspenders and a bow tie.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's something I started my freshman year. I always wore a bow tie to every single game. Wherever we went, I always wore a bow tie for every game. Some bow ties were lucky. So I tried to keep a record of which ones we won, which ones we didn't, to make sure if it was a big game, I'd wear it. But that was the look I always went for. I always went for the bow tie look. I always thought it was fun. It kept it cool, and for me, it was a good time. The guys liked it. The other thing that we would do is before the locker room, before the games and stuff like that, I go in the middle and dance and get everybody hyped up. So that was always a good time. And it was always interesting seeing the kid with the bow tie get in the middle and dance. And we had everybody clapping and stuff. So it was always fun.
So talk about what you learned from Coach Lewis and Jared Grasso.
Yeah, so Coach Lewis, I'll start with Coach Lewis. He's probably one of the best basketball minds I've been around. How he's basically able to go and win a game and win games every level he's been on is truly incredible. At some point, Iona's going to have to name the court after him. It's got to be Tim Clue's court for all the success and notoriety and everything that he's done for that school. Also, probably one of the nicest people I've been around. Super caring, was always helpful. Was a true leader, a true mentor, and a guy who could not be more passionate about the game of basketball. Spent countless hours, not only on the practice court, but in the film room, wherever it was. He was putting stuff to basketball. But he would always talk about life issues too and relating it. And I think it kind of put everything in perspective a lot of times when you're sitting there and you're saying, "Oh, I'm having a really bad day," and that he'd go and tell one of his life stories, and you're like, "Well, I'm not having a bad day anymore because that's a bad day." I may have just not handed in an assignment and I forgot, and I'm now going to get a bad grade. I'm thinking to myself, I'm having a bad day, but really I'm not. So he for sure 100% is a model of which I run a lot of our systems now at St. John's Prep by, in terms of philosophy, in terms of practice plans and stuff like that. We do a lot of the same stuff. And it's a proven winner, really, and he's a proven winner, and the 4 MAAC championships will always be history at Iona, and he's going to be history in itself for leading it. And with Coach Grasso is my man. He and I are really close. He and I text, every so often. We hop on the phone with each other anytime Bryant's down, playing a game in New York City. I'm always there. My brother actually is a walk-on there now, so he's actually playing for Coach Grasso. But again, one of the nicest people I've met, one of the most caring people I've met, one of the most helpful people, always there to help me, always there to help anybody, with anything that they may need. And I'll forever be indebted to Coach Grasso for all the stuff that he's done for me, and all the stuff that he's been able to help me with, and all the tips and the advice and everything. I actually was just texting with him 2 days ago, just talking about TBT and things like that. And just that kind of that value where you're able to basically get on the phone with a Division I coach and talk some strategy. You're basically able to get on and talk about, hey, what would you do in this situation? You're basically able to get that mentorship from a guy that's a young guy. He's proven it at every level in terms of his recruiting and things like that. And so for me, everybody in that Iona coaching staff from anywhere I was a part of were some of the nicest people I've ever met. Gary Bryant, Zach Boisvert, Bill O'Keefe, Billy Singleton, Coach Clues, Coach Grasso, Brock Erickson, Cooper Calzanetti, Doug Leischner. It goes from all of them. Each of them have looked out for me in a different way, and are always there to be in contact with me. So, but those 2 guys especially are big time mentors in my life for sure.
So where did St. John's Prep come into play?
So after college, I had been coaching a couple AAU teams out in Long Island. So you'll appreciate this, I think. I was coaching a 5th grade team and a 3rd grade team, and the 5th grade team actually had Anthony Giltz, who's now headed off to IMG this year. So he was playing for me as a 5th grader up until 7th grade. We had been playing out in Island Garden, and we were playing a team. We were playing a St. Mary's CYO team that had been put into the Super League, and the head coach of that team was, Coach Matiratana, who used to coach out at Half Hollow Hills West with Tobias Harris, Tavon Sledge, all those guys. And after the game, he said, hey, would you ever be interested in coaching in high school? I said, honestly, Coach, 100%. And he said, well, I got a guy who used to play for me who's the varsity coach at St. John's Prep, who's now looking for a JV coach. I said, give me the number. I went right out to the parking lot, called, had an interview. Unfortunately for me, head coach of JV wasn't going to work in terms of time where I was at with my job at the time. But I said, I would do anything to just be a part of it. So they allowed me to be, they hired me for assistant varsity coach. And the rest is history. And, I've been there ever since, and it's a place I love. It's a place that I never, ever plan on leaving anytime soon.
Now, talk about you also being the dean. Like, I know, like, a lot of the kids, you're very young. You're like 26, right?
Yeah, 26.
And, you're maybe a few years older than some of the kids and some of the seniors. Like, how is it being the one that has to put the hammer down whenever they're acting out or stuff like that?
I think it's good. And, I think it helps the kids because I'm able to relate to them and some of the issues that they may be going through rather than somebody who may be on the older side of things. I'm able to have conversations and put it into perspective, I think a lot better. And a lot of the advice I give them and a lot of the times where I need to lay the hammer down, like you're referring to, is I'll try to put it into, I come from the business world. I put it into, all right, if this was a real job, what do you think would happen? And do some role playing that way. If this was a professional workplace, and try to explain to them how I understand that what you're doing may only be a high school thing. But I want you to look beyond that. I want you to prepare as if you're in a college, as if you're heading to a job, as if you're preparing, to start your professional work life. So if you're late to school and you're late to a job, you're late to school, you get detention, right? It's not the end of the world. Okay, I go to detention, I go there. If you're late to a job, you get fired. There's a real drastic difference. And I try to put it in those perspectives so that way the kids understand, like, guys, this isn't, if you don't get detention for being late to work. If I'm late to work, there's real repercussions. And I think it's a good approach, and I think the kids have understood it. And for the most part, they respect the where I'm coming from, which is good.
So St. John's Prep has a good list of alumni. They have Talik Brown, who's at UConn, Mario Cuomo, the late Mario Cuomo, rest in peace. Brian Dunstan, who played for Fordham and is playing overseas. Vern Fleming, who was a first-round pick in the same draft as Michael Jordan, 1984, when the school was named Mater Christi. Al McGuire, Frank McGuire, both of whom were college coaches. And last but not least, the former voice of the Yankees, Bob Shepard. That's a crazy list.
Yeah. No, it's actually a school with pretty rich basketball tradition, going back to when Herb Hess was the coach too. He's up there in terms of top AA winning of championships. I know Joe Arbitello's number one, but, Herb Hess is, I believe, top 6 or top 5 on that list. It really is a rich basketball tradition school, even dating back to when Coach Gatto was there. Coach Gatto and I still talk. He and I have communicated with each other. He comes to the Christmas party. He's actually out at Portledge, assistant coach, lending his knowledge there. And, he and I talk at least a couple times a year, just catching up, seeing how everything's going. So, it's good to stay involved in that rich tradition, right? And you want to be able to bring that rich tradition back. You want to be able to be, the coach or lead the program where you can say, look, we were once here. Maybe we've fallen off for, a couple of years, 10 years, but that's where we want to go back to. That's how we want this program to get to. There's no, oh, well, if we do it, that's great. No, that's where we're going. And if you're not going with us, then, it's not going to work out because, I demand perfection. in terms of a lot of the stuff that we do on the practice court in games and in the classroom. And if you can't follow the philosophies that we're trying to preach and trying to do, then, maybe I'm not the coach for you. Maybe I'm not the one that will help you in terms of, breaching that college goal you may have on the basketball court. Because if you're going to do it, you got to do it 100%. You got to give it your all. It can't just be, oh, well, if I didn't do it right this way, it's okay. No, it's not okay. It's gotta be there, just because that's the level that colleges go at. It's not, we're going to go 50% one day, 100%. No, it's 100% all the time. You can't just turn it on and off. So I think it's been eye-opening for the kids there to experience that. My first year as assistant coach, I believe we won 2 games. We played a 14-game schedule. We lost a lot of games by a lot of double digits. And then my first year as head coach, we won 8 games. And then this past year, we won 13 games and had the first winning record and our first playoff win in the past, 5 to 10 years. So it's an upward trajectory that we're on. And, it's one of those things where you got to buy in, because if you're not going to buy in, it probably won't be fun for you.
So talk about, some of the players on your roster.
Yeah. So, when I first got to St. John's Prep, it was a lot of seniors. We graduated 7 seniors my first year as assistant coach. We had some good JV kids. And then my first year, we brought in some pretty good 8th graders this past year. And we also had some kids transfer in that, wanted a great education. They wanted to come here, get a great education from the various public schools that they went to. And, they love the school. They've fully embraced the school. They've been fully embraced by everybody, and they're great value adds to the school. Some of the guys that we have on our team, rising senior Bamboo Torre, he's actually been reached out to by about 20 D1 schools during this spring, who have reached out and expressed interest in having him come to the schools. We have Justin Green, who's, I believe, on the last time I looked on the Real Scout basketball rankings, he was number 30 in the sophomore class, rising sophomore class, as well as some other guys. Kalen Lawson, who's on our team, he's a hungry bulldog. He's a guy that likes to get after it. He's one of those guys that will give you 110% all the time. Josh Antoine, he's another one. He's an athletic guy, can get up and down the floor. And we graduated a couple really good kids this year as well. Patrick Shea being one of them. I know who you're pretty fond of in the games that you've come and watched him play. Delano Berry, Josiah Fernandez, who's going to go on to College of Mount St. Vincent and play. But other than that, it's a complete program. It's a complete program that we're all looking to buy into. When 8th graders come on open house visits and stuff like that and ask about the program, it's something that we can now say where hey, here's where we were a couple years ago. Here's where we want to be. And if you want to be a part of that rising of the program, you have a place here. It's one thing to go to programs that always are traditional winners and traditional powerhouses year in and year out in the Catholic League. And then it's another thing if you want to come and say, you know what, I want to be the one that makes the change. I want to be the one that goes a different path. I want to be the one that comes out and says, you know what, I want to do something special here in my 4 years. And those are the guys that we like to look for. I like to talk to.
Yeah, this year, Salesian. Well, yeah, next season Salesian is moving up to the A division. So now there's gonna be 6 teams in the B division. Like, how do you feel? How much more competitive will the league be?
It's funny because when you're talking to kids that probably don't know anything about the B division, they just say, well, if Christ the King's in AA and you're in the B, you must stink, right? That's not the case. I think every division is competitive in its own right. Obviously we're not getting the RJ Davises and the Alan Griffins and the Ryan Myers and guys like that in AA's. I think the A division is also extremely competitive, right? And I think it will be competitive, but the B division is really competitive as well. There's some really good talent in the B division that people just say, oh, it's the B division. But I think that the B division was always competitive. Regis has always been one of the top perennial teams. Salesian has always been one of the top perennial teams. Sacred Heart has always been one of the top teams in our division. We're slowly starting to make our way up the ranks in the B division. This year we came in fourth. 2 years ago we came in dead last. More Catholic, they're pretty good. Their coach, Kyle McElharney, he's got them going the right direction. Cathedral's been pretty good. Cristo Rey's been pretty good. So every team is good in their own right. I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, it's the B division. Because we go out and we play probably one of the tougher schedules out of any of the schools that schedule. This past year we played St. Anthony's and won Long Island. We've always either play or scrimmage Lehigh since I've been head coach. We played in the Tim Thomas inaugural showcase where we went 2-0. We beat the Patrick School Academy, and we beat Eastern High School from D.C. We played St. John the Baptist. We played Kellenberg. We go out and like to challenge ourselves with playing teams in either the A or AA divisions, just because I think that it's great for our kids. And I think that also it shows that, we may be in the B, but we got a lot of talent here. And if you say, oh, we're playing St. John's Prep, they're in the B, we may knock you off one of those times. You never know. But I think for the kids, and for our league, top to bottom, in both A, B, and AA, it's extremely competitive in all three.
So, yeah, in addition to St. John's Prep this year or this summer, you're also going to be coaching the Iona Gaels team in the TBT. Talk about because I know you coached them before. Talk about that team.
Yeah, so this hopefully when we get in, if we get in, this will be my fourth year putting the team in. It all started. God, that's our first year in was 2017. So 2016, I was sitting in a hotel room in Manchester, Connecticut on a work trip, watching TV, flipping through the channels, and it was Overseas Elite versus Team Colorado in the finals at Fordham. And I said, you know what, I think if we were able to get some of the Iona guys in here, I think it'd be interesting. And I put a DM group out, seeing if anybody would be interested. And we got some feedback, and, I stayed in touch throughout the year. And, that first year's team really set the tone. And I truly believe this, and I'll always say this, is that, if we didn't win that first year, that first game, that first year, there would be no Gale Nation TBT. There would be no following. There would be no exciting games. So I'm always thankful for the guys that kind of bought in that first year. Isaiah Williams, Aaron Roundtree, Kareem Canny, Jayon James, D'Angelo Harrison, Stevie Burt, Javier Carter, Tyler McDaniels, Taj Ridley. Those are all the guys that bought in to wanting to play and wanting to compete. And some of the other guys, also were busy at the time, but I think that they realized that there was something that could be special, in terms of the TBT. And then that second year we played in Brooklyn. We had an absolutely stacked lineup. We had Scotty Machado, Sean Armand, Dave Lowry, Halil Kanasevic, Gary Forbes, AJ English, Stevie Bird again, Aaron Roundtree again. That team was really, really good. And it seems as though every year we're the best first-round team in the tournament. We win every first-round game against some TBT perennials, and then we always we can't make it over the second-round hump. But, this year, if we're able to get in, it should be really exciting. This year's roster is really deep and really exciting as well. We have 3 former NBA players on our roster this year, which is something that's going to be exciting to be a part of. Last year was my first year coaching, like you said. So I was able to get a professional coaching win under my belt. And now hopefully this year, we're able to make some noise and make a deep run in the tournament.
So, yeah, this is a question that I love to ask my other guests whenever I'm doing interviews. If you could go back to, say, 2010, when you were a junior in high school, what would you tell John at 16 or 17 as he's making the transition from player to manager?
That's a great question. What would I say? I'd say always follow your passion. Follow your passion is big. You know, there was a time where, you know, coming out of college, I had an opportunity to go and follow my passion. I decided not to, and I regretted it for the longest time in terms of not doing it. And ultimately, it kind of led me to where I am now. And you know, they say everything happens for a reason, and I couldn't be happier where I am now in the stage of my life, professional and coaching wise, and the kids that I get to impact, and the kids that I get to, you know, teach about life lessons and things on and off the court, and making sure that, you know, they stay out of trouble and do the right things in every situation. But definitely follow your passion would probably be the biggest one, because everything else will fall into place if you follow your passion first.
Final question. What's next in the future for John Kiggins and St. John's Prep?
What'd you say? I missed that. What'd you say?
All right, final question. What's next in the future for John Kiggins and St. John's Prep?
Oh, what's next in the future? Well, the goal next year is to win a city championship in the B division. That's first and foremost. And then the goal, I think, is to build a program and be a part of a program for years and years down the line, where, you know, people can look back and say, you know, they did it the right way. And, you know, that was something that, you know, people want to be a part of. It's a program that people want to come to and learn and have a good time and make sure that they, again, learn lessons both on and off the court, and sky's the limit, hopefully, you know, for the program, and hopefully potentially move up to the AA ranks and see what we can do there with some of those teams. But definitely the first and foremost is to win the B championship. So we're working hard already in terms of our guys are already doing their workouts in the parks and things like that with one goal in mind, and that's winning a B championship.
Well, thank you, John, for coming on to my platform and sharing your testimonial. And I wish you and St. John's Prep nothing but the best moving forward.
Appreciate you. I'm definitely going to get you a schedule once it's set, and hopefully we see you at some of our games this year.
Well, everybody, this is episode 26. Shout outs to everybody that's listened to the platform. Once again, check out this episode on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram TV. Much love. Stay safe out here. Peace.